Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sports. I'm about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from the Winnipeg Free Press. Together, we are Kenny and Renny. This is the Kenny and Renny post-game show. And I know on these post-game shows, we don't really like to talk about other teams. I heard you loud and clear when I opened up a couple of shows ago talking about the Calgary Flames. So the rule on Kenny and Renny is that we don't talk about other sports teams on Kenny and Renny. We only talk about the Winnipeg Jets. Put the blinders on. Nothing else exists. Those are the rules. But you know Rennie's a rebel. You know that. You know that rules are meant to be broken when rebels are involved. And so we're going to talk not a lot about it. Just coming down here. I realize a lot of you people are going to be talking or listening to this and maybe watching the Jays in the background. I won't do that because you have my undivided attention. You deserve my undivided attention. But if people want to weigh in, if people want to, update the scores, tell us how things are going, feel free to do so. Feel free to let it fly in the chat room. But I ask one thing. Renny takes his journalism seriously, as does Kenny. Nothing but facts in there, okay? The other night, I think it was game 2, and someone threw in here that the Jays had just hit a grand slam in the game, and I brought that up onto the show. I put it on screen because Renny implicitly trusts his audience. And someone out there took advantage of Renny in a live situation and was giving false updates to the game. How dare they? How dare they root that person out, shame them, embarrass them, whatever you need to do. But hey, everybody, bring it in here. I want to see you enjoying the Jays game. Amazing what's going on right now. I was a teenager. I was in my early teens when the Jays won in 92 and 93. And that was just, as a young fan, Renny absolutely loved that. So I don't want to take away from that. If people are focused a little more on the Jays game, I get it. It's pretty compelling. But if you're bringing the updates in here, make sure you're getting it right, okay? And do not be misleading people. That's wrong. That's just plain wrong. And we don't like to be wrong on this show. The only person who gets to be wrong is Renny, and Renny will somehow convince you that he was right anyways. So in the end, no one is ever wrong. So don't be wrong. That's the rules. Let's take you, folks, on the Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent opening drive on this Winnipeg Jets game. Solid victory against the Philadelphia Flyers. And if you want to kind of continue on that theme that I've been building on about the Winnipeg Jets being hard to beat, and listen, let's just get this straight here for a second. If I'd started out and started the season telling you about the Jets being tough to beat and they came out to like a 1-4 start, I'd look ridiculous, wouldn't I? Except I said early on, telling you what I'm seeing, the Jets are a hard team to beat. I said we're just on a continuation of what we saw from last year. And now all of a sudden the Jets have 3 wins and 1 loss, looking impressive, looking like they're suffocating teams. That's what we saw here tonight. It was basically a sleeper. Brutus the Barber Beefcake came into this game, threw the person in the sleeper hold, and at the end of the game, a little bit of the humiliation. Remember, Brutus the Barber Beefcake used to cut the people's hair after he put them in the sleeper and knocked them out. Logan Stanley getting into the rough stuff, sending a message down the road for the Philadelphia Flyers, who are trying to turn things around under Rick Tocchet. They're trying to get up. They're trying to dust themselves off the mat. Logan Stanley saying, no, insult to injury on the way out of this game. But if we get into the theme of this team being hard to beat, goaltending is part of it. But really, to me, we were listening to the broadcast. If you were listening to it, it would have sounded like this game was all Connor Hellebuyck in the second period. It wasn't, okay? There was, one of the saves that he made that was one of the outstanding saves was a shot that was going to miss the net by 2 or 3 feet. The Jets didn't need brilliant goaltending in this game. They got good goaltending out of Connor Hellebuyck. It wasn't outstanding goaltending. It was good goaltending on a team that really just ground this down. You know what the Winnipeg Jets can do that makes them tough to beat? Well, they can walk in to your barn and grind things to a halt to the point that your fan base is booing. They're so frustrated. Now, let's be honest with ourselves, folks. You love it. You love watching the Winnipeg Jets throw the sleeper hold on people. But if you showed up to a wrestling match and Brutus the Barber Beefcake didn't do any elbows, didn't, throw the guy on the ropes, no suplexes, none of those things, and he just threw the guy in a sleeper hold, and that was the end of the match, you'd probably think it was a little boring. If you're playing the Winnipeg Jets on a night like tonight and you're a Philadelphia Flyers fan, you bought a ticket, and you go in there, it's not the most compelling hockey. It's not the most fun hockey. This was the Jets dragging this down, crazy low event. But one of the things that makes them hard to beat is in low event games, the Jets have always had this going way back to the Paul Maurice days. They're opportunistic. They always have been. They continue to be. They don't need a lot of opportunities. When they do get their opportunities, boom, it's in the back of the net. At some point, I think they'd had three goals on 7 shots in this game. So they can grind a game down. They can make you play their game in your barn, in front of your fans, to the point that your fans are going to be booing you because they just want to see things like open up here. They're opportunistic. That's another one. There's more to this. We'll get into it with Ken, but here's another one. You heard it here first from Renny. It was the case last year. It was the case right down to helping the Winnipeg Jets get past the St. Louis Blues. And it's the case again this year. You know what I'm about to say. The hockey gods love the Winnipeg Jets. Crucial moment in this game. The Philadelphia Flyers score a goal. They're putting on a little bit of pressure. They're building a little bit of momentum. They get a goal. And Morgan Barron goes down and shoots one that bounces off one defenseman, around the goaltender, off the other defender, and in the back of the net. You can say anything you want about this, clean living, all these different kind of things. And yes, the front, I think it's Noah Cates is in the front of the net. It goes off his back and into the net. And we've talked about this at length on this show. If you're in a defensive position where you are fully focused on your guy in front of the net, it puts you in a position where you now become something to deflect the puck off of. Now, if Morgan Barron had just shot the puck straight off that guy and into the back of the net, you'd have a little bit of a case here. But the fact that he just fires the puck towards the net, hits one defenseman, gets across the goaltender, bounces off another defender into the back of the net. Listen, the hockey gods love the Winnipeg Jets. I said it first. I was right. I was right at the most crucial point of the season last year, and I'm right now, folks. They love the Winnipeg Jets, and that moment of the game is basically... Now, it says something about the Winnipeg Jets that they needed a crucial point of the game, the Philadelphia Flyers, to get back into this, and the hockey gods took it away. There you go. But that was just one possible avenue for the Philadelphia Flyers to win this game. The Winnipeg Jets gave themselves multiple avenues to walk away with the win in this game, and that's exactly what they did. And ladies and gentlemen, that right there is your Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent opening drive. And hey, this month the Toyota Get In and Go event is on now at Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent. Finance the 2025 Tacoma truck, and that's a beauty. I know one of my buddies had one. A Tacoma truck from 5.89% with up to a 1% loyalty rate reduction and a $1,500 accessory credit. But hurry. The offer ends October 31st. We're halfway through the month. Visit Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent for a test drive today. Okay, that's enough of Rennie's blathering. Time to hear some of Kenny's blathering. So let's do it. Let's bring in the man with the best music in the business. Here comes Kenny. Ken, Gift Guy is talking about a free Toyota giveaway. He's saying here, and here's the deal, folks. There is going to be a free Toyota giveaway at the end of all this. I'll tell you exactly what it is. It's Renny giving his 2007 Toyota Yaris to little Renny Jr., who's going to be driving soon. And then Renny moving on, walking into Jim Pattison Toyota, talking to the folks there and setting himself up with a new vehicle. So yes, Gift Guy, the 2007 Toyota Yaris giveaway is on, but there's only one entrant, and thus there's only going to be one winner. So sorry, gift guy. Maybe another time we'll see if we can put something together for you. But I can tell you one thing. Kenny's going to be putting up some good analysis here, just like he's put together a banger of an ensemble there. Kenny, always looking sharp. He gets on the road. He gets to New York. He knows how to look. He's one of those guys, walks around Manhattan, and people stop and take a look, because Kenny went down to Vittorio Rossi when he was in Winnipeg to make sure he was the kind of guy that in one of the fashion meccas of the world, Ken stands out. If you want to have the ability to stand out wherever you go, you know what to do. Head on down to Vittorio Rossi on Corridon Avenue. Walk in loudly, proclaim Kenny and Renny sent you. Ask for Frankie and the boys, and they will do you up right. Ken, I described it as a Brutus the Barber beefcake type sleeper from the beginning of the game to the end of it. What did you see?
Yeah, it was not the when you said low event, I would say you were being kind. Low event would probably encapsulate a lot of what we saw in this game, but I would say this, Sean, for a team that had been, I don't want to say bleeding scoring chances in terms of what they were giving up, but just looked nothing like the team that was the boa constrictor last year. I think this was an important game for the Jets in terms of how they played without the puck, how they defended, their back pressure, their ability to disrupt plays, not give up many odd man rushes outside of the one that led to a goal on a 6-on-5 extra attacker delayed penalty situation late in the game. Just did not give up a whole lot. They only gave up 2 shots on net in the third period, and one of them was the goal that happened. I really like the way that they played without the puck. At the same time, they were still, I think they were, driving the play in terms of, playing the style of game they wanted to, Sean. We know this is the case. I mean, with the injuries the Jets have, and we know it's a solutions, not excuses environment, but let's get real. I mean, the Jets are missing 3 important players. 2 of them are among their most important defensive players. So there are going to be hiccups. Today, we didn't see a lot of hiccups. We saw one hiccup that ended up in the back of the net when Alex Iafallo rarely did not get the puck deep. That created the chance for Owen Tippett. And the second goal is just kind of a, one of those plays where, I didn't really notice what the penalty was going to be called at the time. And then, the Jets, I wouldn't say they lost the guy in traffic, but Mitchkov just kind of found a quiet zone, and Noah Juleson makes a really nice pass to him. But, I mean, Connor Hellebuyck had to be, solid, but, he didn't have a ton of work. And he didn't have a ton of work because A, the Jets had the puck a lot, but B, they just kept their opponent to the outside and really put the boa constrictor on in terms of their defending. And quite frankly, in a game that was low event, the Jets still scored 5, right? So yes, one of them is an empty netter, but at a time when the Jets really clamped down defensively, they were able to still score, put up a 5 spot. So for me, I would classify this as a tidy game. Scott Arniel thought their first period was the best period they've played so far in the 4 games. Let's go to the direct quote here. He basically said, first period was our best period of the year with puck pressure, the reloads, the communication, not spending a lot of time in their end. Now, he didn't love the second period, but he thought that the third was pretty quality as well, with just giving up the 2 shots on net. Only 6 high danger chances in the game. And again, I think that's probably being kind. I'm not sure I remember 6-10 bellers in the game. And again, I know it's on the plotting map and everything else, not necessarily who had the scoring chance, but I really thought that the Jets did a good job defensively. And, at a time where they're wanting, Scott Arniel talked this morning, Sean, about giving up too many chances. And, they got the message, obviously, with the 2-day break. And one of those days was an off day. I really thought that they were sound defensively for the most part. And when they're sound defensively, we know they're a tough team to beat.
I don't like to usually do this early, but my hand is being forced in this situation here. We've got a bunch of Barron stuff here and here. Hot take, Barron 50 in 50, probably a joke. But it's a hot take. Let's call it what it is. Eric Horleifson identifies it and says, hot take, Barron is nominated for a Selke. Hey, the guy's been playing great. He's been playing great, but I'm warming my hands by the fire here right now because we know that the Selke Award is one of those awards that you basically have to be both a great defensive guy, but on top of that, you have to put up a certain amount of points now. So there's a high expectation of where you're going with this. But I will say this. This is a hot take in the right direction, as Elias McCracken says. We are quietly watching the rapid evolution of Morgan Barron. Not just goals, shorties, but also doing the little things defensively and all from the fourth line. I'd say it like this. I love this comment, Ken, because it basically identifies what's happening here. Morgan Barron is building his game from the foundation out, and he's built an extremely solid foundation, and now he's just adding to that, right? He built that house in the neighborhood that's standing. That thing's not going anywhere. If the wolf comes, that's the house that the little pigs are all running to, but he's dressing it up, right? He's putting on really, really nice siding. You know what I'm saying? And, maybe he's putting on tile roofing on that thing. We could get to the pristine roofing stuff with that. But like, he's making it look really, really nice, and he's kind of building his game from the game out. So what we're seeing here is no doubt Elias McCracken pointing out what is happening with Morgan Barron, and some other people pointing out some of their wish lists for Morgan Barron. I love it. Keep the hot takes coming. We know that Flame and Comfort is going to keep the heat coming. And ladies and gentlemen, that's your K&R Hot Take, brought to you by Flame and Comfort, Manitoba's premier supplier of fireplaces, wood stoves, inserts, and everything hearth-related. After 50 years heating up your world, Flame and Comfort has moved. They've moved to 1465 St. James Street. We were down there, Ken. You will find, like we found, it's one of the most impressive showrooms in Western Canada. You don't need your hot takes to keep that warm feeling inside, folks. Visit Flame and Comfort. They will take care of it for you. And you know what? It was called, and I realized I'm not sure what's happening here.
You went to it, but you forgot it.
No, yeah, but just hold on one second. The Wild Bill is calling for the headband. I'm looking around me. It's not here. I think Mrs. Renny asked me to wear it out of the office
the other day,
and I forgot to bring it back. So I don't have it. I'm missing on this, but you know who never misses is the folks down at Myers, Glenn and Jonah. You want to go see them, just like Chef Richard, our main man, went down. He dropped in and he said, dropped our guy's name when filling a prescription at the pharmacy on Tuesday. Thanks for doing that, Chef Richard. We ask all of you folks, when you go in to see our sponsors, let them know that Kenny and Renny sent you. I'm letting down Glenn and Jonah here by not having the headband here. Myers,
buddy, you got the mullet headband behind you. You can go with the mullet headband.
Well,
I'm here to help you.
Boom. That's how hey, in case of emergency, break glass. I'm not going to break glass on that thing today, but I am going to do that. So that's going to be the situation here. Ken saves the day for Glenn and Jonah like they do for so many folks out there. Let's make it a Sean's headband version of the Kenny and Renny show, folks. In all this chatter, Ken, and all this good hair that's popping up in the show and headbandery happening on the show, we're talking about Morgan Barron. I realize we haven't given you a chance to weigh in on it. Lots to talk about. I know you wrote an article on the guy the other day. Maybe expand on what you were talking about and what you're seeing from this player who is just taking step after step after step.
Yeah, just impressive to see what Morgan Barron is doing here. I mean, we've talked about this for years, and I'm an early adopter on the Morgan Barron stock, and have said before, I think that he is a guy that can push, beyond just being a double-digit goal scorer. And being a double-digit goal scorer is important, but I think there's a little bit more offensive upside to his game. I had a great chat with his Cornell Big Red head coach, Mike Scheifele, yesterday. And Mike absolutely raved about Morgan Barron, how, he came into the program as a pretty raw player, but, physically matured. He got on the weight program. And the thing that you hear from, every player that you speak to on the Jets about Morgan Barron. Eric Comrie called him a specimen. Dylan DeMello said he's a load to handle. I mean, this is a guy who, and again, I didn't know this, Sean, but in speaking with Morgan yesterday after practice, he said he was 5'8" in grade 11, 5'8", and now he is 6'4", 220 pounds. He's the opposite of me, who was 5'8" in grade 7 and barely got to 5'9". So I had a little bit of FOMO when Morgan Barron told me his growth spurt happened in high school, but he's starting to use that frame. And again, a great admission, and this is something that we never think about. We talked, and I wrote about it at the time when Chris Tanev and Brandon Tanev, when they had their growth spurts. When you grow 2 inches or more in a summer, it's awkward in terms of filling out your frame. And he talked about the skating mechanics and how they change. And even the lie of your stick. I mean, you're used to using a stick at a certain level. Some of these little things that seem kind of minor to casual fan, but he really did a great job of evolving his game and growing and adding layers. Dylan DeMello used the word layers, and how he's been able to, 1 year you're adding on penalty kill responsibilities, then now you're being used at center and in more face-offs. And, it's interesting. So the other day, Morgan Barron has a tough day in the circle. Parker Ford comes in today. Morgan Barron only takes draws on his strong side, Sean, and he goes 3 for 4. And Parker Ford takes draws on his strong side, and he goes 4 for 7. So together they were, more of a force, and they started with the puck a little bit more. But in terms of his all-around game, I love how he's getting to the net. And I mean, you talked about it, Sean. Like, this is totally it's a fluke goal in the sense that it goes off 2 people, but it's not a fluke goal because of what Parker Ford does. Parker Ford getting to the net and making Noah Cates turn his back to Barron to defend Parker Ford is the only reason that goal goes in. And that, the backside of Noah Cates is even available for a bank shot that wasn't called in this game of hockey billiards. But I love the way that Barron is using his speed. He's feeling confident with the puck. And again, yesterday he's quick to dismiss. He's not being dismissive, but he doesn't want to go all crazy about 2 highlight reel goals because he knows it's only, game 3. But, he gets another one today. And, he admitted last year, the first quarter of the year was a struggle offensively for Barron. It took him a long time to find his game. I think he only scored his first goal in game 19, and then he had the empty netters. So it took him a long time to beat a goalie. And now this year, not only is he showing maturity in his all-around game, he's showing some pretty slick hands and tight. And now, again, we mentioned today is a hockey gods bounce kind of a goal, but I mean, 2 absolute roof daddy specials on the backhand. I mean, that's impressive stuff here. So for me, I love the way that he's playing. And again, when I say it just feels like he's scratching the surface, I just think that Morgan Barron is going to continue to demand more out of the coaches because he's going to continue to give them more. So while he's able to, round out that all-around game, getting to the net, we saw the disallowed goal in the playoffs last year. This is a guy who's a lot to handle. He can skate. He's playing in the middle. He's got, pretty good vision. He can handle the responsibility down low. And again, I've said this before this year. I think he can go up and play with Adam Lowry if you need him to go there. I don't know if Scott O'Neill prefers to use him at 4C. That's totally fine, and that'll be important. But I think he's the kind of guy that can grow into taking on more responsibility. And I know we had the commenters saying, "Oh, maybe future captain." I mean, this is a guy who is an impressive individual, high character guy. And as Mike Scheifele told me, his college coach, this guy was a great leader, beloved by his teammates because he's willing to do the hard things along with being a player. In college, he was a guy they leaned on, but he still did the hard things. He was a hard worker, and we're starting to see him kind of blossom before our very eyes here. And that's, again, we've talked a lot about, trades that have been made over the years. And Sean, the trade for Morgan Barron and the draft pick that became Elias Solomonson, we've spent a lot of time talking about that Kings trade, the Dubois deal that has obviously reaped some humongous benefits. But that trade with the Rangers for Andrew Kopp, was a very good example of asset management. And Kopp did a great job for the Rangers, but the return was high. And again, I mentioned this because it was a good trade for the Jets at the time. It's also a reminder of what you have to give up to get that type of impact player at the deadline. Because, Sean, the Jets are going to be looking for an impact player at the deadline this year again, whether it's more scoring up front in the middle six or if it's a guy that can help on the back end.
It's interesting you brought up that trade in that way, because the other part of that trade is obviously Brad Lambert, right? But the Brad Lambert thing was not the original trade. It was a condition if the Rangers went a certain distance. Right. And I always remember that year. That's the year that the Penguins are on their way to knocking the Rangers out in the first round. And then Jacob Trouba goes to knock Sidney Crosby out for a couple of games, concusses him. It totally changes that series, and they end up going and making it to the conference final and making that. So it's a huge return, right? Like if you take a look at the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade, massive return. Yeah. But if you take a look at this one, it sure looks like Morgan Barron right now, the way he's playing is maybe this level that he's playing at is the best we ever saw Andrew Kopp play at, right? He'd have to do it for longer. Andrew Kopp did it for a long time. And yeah, didn't he have like a 4-goal game or something like that? But Morgan Barron's doing things that I don't think Andrew Kopp did, like size-wise and strength-wise and those kind of things. And it's getting me to the place where had, Trouba not knocked out Sidney Crosby in that series, and the return just have been Morgan Barron, and there was another player involved in that, was there not?
Well, they got the second that was Solomonson, and the first became Lambert. So
there you go. I mean, this trade
there wasn't another player.
Like, yeah. So, but even if it was just Morgan Barron, it's looking like you just went out and you got a younger version of Andrew Kopp, who's going to be here for years, who's bigger, who's stronger, who's more of a specimen in that manner. So, I mean, that trade makes sense if it's 1-for-1. Never mind the other players that they get from that and what they've turned them into. More fleecing, we should say. Have
you heard 21 goals 1 year? So Barron has to get to that 15+ level.
Sure. I don't know if you've heard this
rumor,
speculation, but the whole thing about Kevin Cheveldayoff and his side hustle. He's got a sheep farm. All the fleecing that he's been doing out there. I just came up with that on the spot. Brilliant stuff. Let's move on.
How tight is that headband right now? How tight is that headband? Sorry.
Well done. Let's just go to Mark Scheifele, because he is on a heater. Ties the franchise record. Hey, let's give the Pristine Roofing wake-up call, a rude awakening to Blake Wheeler, who's waking up tonight to find that his place atop the Winnipeg Jets all-time scoring list is now a little bit crowded, and he's about to be passed. It's on his way to changing. So you know what that means. Time to give North End Rick the Pristine Roofing wake-up call at 204-981-6289. He's the guy you want down at your place for all your roofing, siding, and exterior needs. You can also call Pristine Roofing directly at 204-237-7663. Give your house the pristine roofing and siding wake-up call, folks. You will be glad you did. Like I'm sure so many of you are glad that the Winnipeg Jets kept Mark Scheifele in the fold those couple of years ago, as he is now on his way to becoming quite possibly considered. I guess Connor Hellebuck would have to be in here, especially with the Hart Trophy. But one of the best where is he in the conversation as the best Winnipeg Jet ever? He's got another bunch of years to kind of keep building on that. And of course, he's being chased by Kyle Connor. But right now, everyone is chasing Mark Scheifele, who is just going out. He's consistent. He started the year on time. He's making an impact in games. That shot tonight, that release, so deceiving. Absolutely fooled the goaltender. And then the one-timer on the power play was just Automatica, Martin Gramatica out there. What more can be said about the way Mark Scheifele is going? He just keeps building and building on his game.
Yeah, just impressive stuff. And, no real surprise for those who didn't see the post. But, I mean, Mark is, dishing all the credit to line mates and people he played with, and, shouted out Blake Wheeler for all the things that he taught him over the years. And it's so interesting, Sean, right? So I wrote that this was like such an interesting kind of intersection of past and present all on one night, right? So on the night that he catches Wheeler, it's just an incredible dish by Connor. So many times it was Wheeler finding Scheifele in the high slot on that one timer when the power play was, ridiculous in the Patrick Laine times. Today it's Kyle Connor, the noted sniper, is the one just after signing that long-term extension is the guy finding Scheifele. And one of the first things Kyle Connor said when talking about the milestone, well, he's obviously going to break it in the next game. Like these guys see at the level that they're both playing at. I mean, 7 points for Connor and 8 for Mark Scheifele, and 5 goals, 8 points. Adam Kimmelman from NHL.com, asked a pretty, good question. I thought, it's like we always hear about in baseball. Ball looks bigger when you're on a heater. He's like, Adam was like, does the net look bigger? Mark's like, no, not really. Just completely dismissive. And I'm not laughing at the question. It was a good question, but the net looks the same size for Mark all the time. He just doesn't need a very big area to shoot it in the net. That's the whole point. And it was interesting, right? So one of the questions in our Free Press mailbag on the weekend was, ESPN predicted that Mark Scheifele was a candidate for regression because he had a high shooting percentage. And Sean, whoever wrote the article, and I don't know who it was, and again, I'm not knocking their research, but Mark Scheifele's shooting percentage doesn't have to go down because he's not a high volume shooter. He looks for quality chances and then often buries them because of his release and accuracy. So
just 1 second. Isn't Mark Scheifele, doesn't he always have a high shooting percentage? Like,
his career high is like 17 plus, but I mean, last year, I guess it was 21. So I think they weren't knocking Scheifele, but they were thinking that if he even goes from 21% to 17, he'll drop from, 40s to mid 30s. So, I mean, it's fine to think that way, but like, this is a guy, it's like those same people are saying, oh, Mark Scheifele's best days are behind him. He's 32 years old. Like, we're talking about a Tom Brady type of level of getting better as you age, like the reverse aging special here with Mark Scheifele. A, he's been durable. B, he continues to put in the work. And C, he looks for little advantages and finds them in his own game, in his work with Adam Oates, in his work on the ice with his teammates, in his offseason work, working with Josh Morrissey all the time they spent together in the summer. I mean, all of those things are, they don't fit here. They don't fit with the program Mark Scheifele is on. Yes, of course, at some point there will be regression. It's not going to be this year. And as I said, I mean, we're not doing any victory laps or, throwing the receipts down after 4 games, but Mark Scheifele is on a mission. He has a mission on getting to Italy, and the way that he started, you can be sure that the folks at Team Canada are both paying attention and watching closely. And again, Sean, this is never about just one player, but in a game that featured Travis Konechny, someone who was chosen ahead of Mark Scheifele,
right?
Travis Konechny is not in Mark Scheifele's league right now. And I know they were asked to play different roles. I'm sorry. It's not close on who makes the team between Travis Konechny and Mark Scheifele right now. And this is not recency bias. This is dating back to last year. And if Mark plays like this for the next 20 plus games, it's going to be hard to leave him off that team, and he shouldn't be left off the team.
So right there, I'm going to start on that, but I don't want to forget the point. I'm going to start and I'm going to work. I'm going to reverse engineer my way back into this. One of the things that I think Scheifele does unbelievably well in his career, there are times, and I think I saw there was there was one play earlier this year where Mark Scheifele, it was one of these situations I thought he should have shot and then he passed it. And Mark Scheifele can have a tendency in his career, throughout his career, to sometimes start overpassing the puck, right? Now, I say that saying it's not a crazy amount. And in fact, what I have seen from this player for the most part is he's one of the best players I've ever seen at when he's maximizing his skill, riding the line between not forcing the pass too often, but making sure that when he shoots, he is so selective about what he does shoot. And I think that's why I've always looked. I remember doing a story on Hockey Night in Canada, and it was in like the 2018, 2019 era. And he was one of the leading players in the league. And he and Patrick Laine was another one. They were both really, really high up when it came to shooting percentage, right? And just, I think that this is, I think that what you would see is there's a lot of players in your career. If you find players that have a super high shooting percentage, they're either like unreal shooters, the Alexander Ovechkin types, or Laine when Laine was really going, or there are players who you will find have that really high shooting percentage, but they spend a lot of time passing and foregoing opportunities. I think Mark Scheifele rides that line better than almost any player I've ever seen before, of like, here I'm maximizing my skill, and where my skill is taking me, it's providing me opportunities. And usually Mark Scheifele knows the right time to pass. And if he's shooting, it's because he just recognizes that it is a higher probability he's going to score. He's like a poker player who is able to sit down at the poker table and the cards flip, and he knows the odds right off the bat. Mark Scheifele has an internal computer that works, and he just has this amazing, in my opinion, recognition of these are the times to shoot. This is the time to capitalize on this opportunity. And because of that, I think he's a player that consistently in a lot of years has such a high shooting percentage. To get to the Team Canada thing, I just got to say this. Here's a player who went last year, fought like crazy to get on that team. I'll use the line that I've been using for a year. I love the line. I said guaranteed, Renny guarantee that Mark Scheifele was going to be on the Four Nations Team Canada team. He wasn't, and I always say I wasn't wrong. Team Canada was wrong. I still believe that. Mark Scheifele could have got frustrated. He could have been like, never mind these guys. He could have pouted. He could have taken that pout into his game. He never stopped. He just kept going. He just kept going. He just kept going, doing the right things. He's doing it as a complete player, the most complete player he's ever been by far in his career over the last little while. And I think personally, to start this game, he's found a way to start this season. He's found a way to elevate even further. If you are Team Canada, he is just quietly letting his play doing the talking. He's not relying on campaigns of people saying, Mark Scheifele should have been there. He's just going out and he's saying, hey, you picked a team last year. I wasn't on it. Too bad. I wanted to be on it. All I'm going to do is just keep going out and showing you the things that are going to make it so hard for you to say no. I say it again. I think Mark Scheifele is going to be on it this time around. I think last year what we saw was there was almost a little bit of a testing because of, Mark Scheifele, the kind of player he'd been before, the way he tailed off defensively for a while around the time people thought he was going to get traded from Winnipeg. There was a lot of people in town. Sorry, Waiter says, will Scheifele play with Crosby or McDavid? He played with McDavid with Team North America. I thought he was great. And I've said this, I think Mark Scheifele is the kind of guy, the way he can control the play in the offensive zone and his small area passing. Boy, oh boy, he could be a valuable guy out there. And he's big and he's strong and he's hard to, Kevin talked about it on the broadcast tonight. He's so hard to get the puck off of once he's got the puck. That's something that is so valuable and can be used. But I just think that because of where Scheifele had come from and because Scheifele had shown a lot of the warts defensively in his game for years, and as things kind of soured for the Winnipeg Jets for a while there, it was a little bit as Mark Scheifele goes, the Winnipeg Jets were going. And I think that there was Team Canada folks out there who picked this team, and when they picked it, they looked over and they watched Mark Scheifele when he didn't make the team. And I think that there was maybe a concern that the way he would respond would not be well. And then that would reinforce the idea that Mark Scheifele, we didn't pick him. And the way he responded to it kind of proved us that we made the right decision. I think everything Mark has done ever since has proved that they made the wrong decision. And I think it gets him, Ken, I will be over in Milan covering the hockey for Sportsnet.
Yes, you will.
I don't know if I've talked about it on the podcast, but I think, maybe I'll ask Mark Scheifele if he wants to share a car to the airport on the way there, because I think he's going to be going there as well. Ken, I wanted to just, because, we get going on this, but let's talk about Toews. Again, I don't want to make this an every show thing. The reason I wanted to bring it up is I'm watching him play here, and I think the Jets system, and I said this on Kipper and Barron, which I was on earlier today, the way the Jets system works is because the Jets system is so good and it wins you games, like it won the Jets here tonight, just suffocated. What it does is it buys time. All you have to do is play the system. And if you play the system well, then you can add to it. Like I talked about Morgan Barron doing, like all the star players kind of did. You'll notice a couple years back when they switched and Bones switched things around, their numbers went down, and now they're building their numbers back up because they're getting to the system and they're adding to it, right? So what you can do is you can just come in and play the system, and the Jets are going to do well. And that's the beauty of bringing in new players, is come in, just play the system. Don't worry about scoring. Don't worry about doing this. Don't worry about doing that. Gus Nyquist, you don't need to worry about trying to do what you did a couple of years ago. Come in, play the system. We'll win more often than not just by you playing the system. And as you get more and more comfortable in the system, you can add to it. And what it does is it buys guys time to figure things out and get their game underneath them. I think that that's a benefit for Jonathan Toews now. I think it's happening right now. He's getting in there. I think he's doing a good job of playing the system. He's a smart player, so he's going to. I personally see it this way, Ken. I said that I think it was the second game of the year. I thought he looked tired in a lot of situations there. Tonight, that penalty that he takes, I know a lot of people don't agree with the penalty. I thought it was a penalty, and I thought it was one of those I'm slightly behind the play penalties. The goal that is scored by Owen Tippett, Jonathan Toews is right on him. He's right on the player, and I bet you, Ken, if that was Jonathan Toews from 5 years ago or 6 years ago or whatever it was, if he's in that position on that player, there's no way Owen Tippett gets that shot off, period.
Yeah, agreed.
Never mind gets it off clean. So I wanted to say this because I know there's a lot of people who are weighing in on Jonathan Toews. We've heard about this. He talked about it. His coach talked about it. His GM. He'll be a project. He'll be a guy whose game builds towards the end of the year. I think it's important to point out the obvious. And I think the obvious thing that I am seeing is Jonathan Toews is clearly not where he was in the past. And there are times where he's out on the ice that I think he's a little bit behind the play. Listen, I don't think it's insulting to say that. I think it's obvious to say it. It's a player who stepped away from the game for 2 years, got 2 years older, is in his late 30s, and now is trying to catch up to the game. I just think it's important to say what we're seeing here. And I think what I'm seeing with Jonathan Toews is a smart player who's playing the system well, who's been finding himself behind the play as he tries to speed his game up to get into the play.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, today it wasn't his best. But he also was, I thought he was one of the best Jets players. We talked about it after the Islander game where he was back to himself. He's not going to have that same energy level every night. I agree with you, but Sean, I would also say this. I do think that some of it is systemic. I think that on the play, on the Tippett goal, Jonathan was definitely backtracking. I think he might have thought that Logan Stanley was going to pressure Tippett in that situation a little bit too. I'm not saying he gave up on the play, but I think the way that he was kind of angling him, I thought maybe he was thinking the D-man would come across there. Again, I'm not making excuses for him. I don't need to make excuses for him. But, and again, I would also say too, if that's game 7 of a, I'm not saying he wasn't trying on the play, but I do think that, in a month or two from now, I don't think that Tippett has that clean look either. I'm with you 100%. Again, I think that there's been not a lot of cohesion on the second line. It's been a revolving door. But again, yeah, I think it's fair. I thought that Jonathan was one of the best players on the ice on Monday. Today, he was not as noticeable or had as much jump. The holding penalty definitely was a penalty. The interference call, I think it was unlucky. It was a guy that he was sort of standing his ground and the player kind of bumped into him in the D zone. So that to me was a play on situation, but all to say, I just don't think that Jonathan had 2 penalties because he was behind the play or anything all the time. But anyways, yeah, it's not going to be a daily referendum, as we always say. But his game on Monday was much better than his game today. But overall body of work through 4 games, I think he's been fine. Had a couple of really strong outings, and there's more. He has more to give, and I think he'll continue to get in the groove. So. again, what we knew going in is that Jonathan would be a force in the circle. Sean, 15-5 on Monday, 8 out of 10 today, 80% today, 75% in his last game. So I would say even on a game where Jonathan didn't maybe have the legs that he had Monday, he still found a way to impact the game to a degree. So, I mean, that's a good sign for him. And as we've mentioned from the beginning, it's what Toews is bringing on the day-to-day workload and leadership and sort of all of those types of things that are the intangibles that we talked about in terms of what he's going to be bringing, on the bigger picture sort of scale of things. So, yeah, I mean, we're going to be talking about him a lot this year for sure.
Yeah, well,
and sorry, to your point about being tired, Sean, after the game on Monday, maybe I didn't bring it up on the show. He did it. He said, I mean, because he's trying to get things to be coming a little bit more naturally, he's found himself, pushing, exerting himself too much, too early in his shift so that he actually was tired. It's not a conditioning thing. This is a guy who did very well in the fitness testing from what we understand, but it's game shape and, getting used to going all out for those 45 to 50 second shifts again. That's a, different level altogether. So
I will say this. At the beginning of the year, I said I thought he'd get 55 points in there. And it's interesting because, met up with Nick Lynham for a coffee today and was chatting with him. And I remember when I'd said that, he'd said, I mean, that would be amazing. But it's funny, I had a conversation, I want to give credit where it's due. I had a conversation with Jeff Hamilton. And Hammy, him and I were talking about that. And I said that. And Hammy had said, well, hold on a second. He's a second line centerman. Isn't that the expectation? Like, I'm saying he's going to get 55 points. And I say that and everyone's like, oh my God, high expectations and this and that. But isn't that what we should be? I mean, if he ends up with just 40 or 45 points, that's not really what you're looking for in a second line center. At some point, you're going to have to start scoring. Now he's got 1 point in 4 games again. Out of the league for 2 years. He's got to make his way back. I think what I'm pointing out is just what I'm seeing as a player, star player, who's really smart, trying to work his way back into the game. Not everyone steps back into the game like Mario Lemieux did, which was absolutely outstanding to watch. But Mario Lemieux also wasn't in his late 30s at that time either. The point being, Jonathan Toews, he's doing those things, winning the faceoffs. Like you said, he's finding ways to contribute. He's finding ways to put his impact on the game while he tries to get that underneath him. But at some point, he's going to need to start scoring. And that's where we're at with Jonathan Toews. At some point, they're going to need him. They brought him in to try and have a second line that is going to be able to help carry the load that right now Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor are carrying an inordinate amount of. He's going to have to score at some point in order for this to start working out the way the Jets wanted it to work out. And hey, you can score a great rate with Cambrian Credit Union. Getting a mortgage doesn't have to throw you off your game while you focus on home sweet home. Our friends at Team Cambrian Credit Union take care of the mortgage part with their low rates. Whether you're looking for a new home, renewing, or making the switch, Cambrian is your mortgage MVP. They can help make the next season of your mortgage path easier and help save you money. Now, that's what we call a win. Head to cambrian.mb.ca/rates for more. And I just wanted to say, if you are thinking of going to Cambrian Credit Union, you'll be joining Renny because I'm re-upping this year. I went in the other day, talked with the folks there. My mortgage is up next April. They told me around January is probably a good time to come in. And we've got some things that got to move around. And I got to say, they've been absolutely great at providing options for us and just having that conversation. So join Renny if you are interested in doing any kind of mortgage work. I promise you will be impressed by how they handle you there. Ken, give a shout out to our main man, Sweet Lou, while we're at it here.
Right on. For folks who have realty needs you'd like to have met, contact Lou Ferlin at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU@LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community, including this podcast.
Gotta say, saw a bus bench with Sweet Lou on it the other day, and I
Indeed.
was like, good looking man, that Sweet Lou. He knows it. He's got it all. Sweet Lou, he's got it all. Ken, take it away on before we get to the awards. We don't have a ton of time, but just what you saw at a Hellebuck tonight.
Yeah, I mean, steady. I mean, I thought there wasn't, again, not overworked, but there were a few times where he had to come up big. Big and boring is kind of, I think, and I wouldn't even say boring, but there's one save in particular that I have pegged for the keg, and it was an obvious one, but it was a play that, again, he makes it look so routine, but it's an absolute beautiful save. It's just a great save, really good read. But again, he's ahead of the game, so I was impressed by him overall. He was disappointed by the goal that got past him late in the game, but overall, I thought he was solid. Yeah, sorry, I'm frozen here. I don't know what to do here.
We can still hear you. We can still hear you. It's okay. You're frozen, but I know if you want to pop out and pop back in. I'll just weigh in quickly on this. I'll say this: the Winnipeg Jets, I think, do such a good job, and I've said this last year. Everyone knows how I feel about the Hart Trophy, and the way that the Winnipeg Jets, I thought, just set Connor Hellebuck up for success the way that they did. I think tonight is just a perfect example of that. If you see the big opportunities that Ken's talking about, there's one that's a cross ice pass, and he gets his pad on it. It's actually missing the net on the far side. So it would have been missing the net, and the guy kind of, he's going where, instead of going to where Connor Hellebuck is, and he goes to where Connor Hellebuck is. So it's one of those kind of incidental saves, I'd call it. But one of the things that I think always shows well for Connor Hellebuck statistically is when those pucks get to the front of the net and the guy is literally in the blue paint and he's got the puck. And Connor Hellebuck, because he's big and boring, I actually think what shows up on stat sheets as extremely high danger chances are actually not very dangerous for the Jets. And I actually think what they do, you'll notice this. Think of this last year. The shots that are dangerous on Connor Hellebuck, go back to that Blues series, are those shots where they get the puck in the mid to high slot with time, and they're able to kind of pick them apart. Those are the shots that you do well with Connor Hellebuck on. What you don't do well with Connor Hellebuck on, because he's big and boring, is if you get the puck right in front of the net and he's right there, there's just nowhere around him, and the Jets defense doesn't give you a lot of time, so you don't get to pick them apart. You don't get to try and freeze them and move to the back end and move to the forehand. You just get to whack the puck once there's a little bit of time, and on the stat sheet, it will show as a shot with a big red heat map that's saying, oh my goodness, they got in tight. But a lot of times those in tight shots that they show you scoring are a player getting the puck, skating in and releasing in that spot, not getting a shot and trying to get it past a goaltender that is right there in front of you. So I do think one of the things that the Jets do really well is the areas of the ice that they allow guys into to get opportunities. They may look dangerous. They may look really dangerous on a stat sheet. I don't think the Winnipeg Jets mind giving up those opportunities at all, because I think they know Connor Hellebuck, in his big and boring style, is not very likely to get beat from those spots. All that said, Ken, it's time we'll go first to the hashtag the keg save of the game, because we're talking Connor Hellebuck right now. What stood out for you?
Yeah, it's that one-timer on the power play. That was, let me see here. It was on Konechny, actually. It was on Konechny. One-timer, really good pass by Owen Tippett. Kind of almost like a no-looker, but Hellebuck was already there. It seemed like he was already there before the pass even got there, which, again, we've talked about his exquisite ability to read the play. That was another great example, but I also think it's the best save he made today, to be honest.
So it's the one I was talking about before that. If you take a look at it on the TV afterwards, Konechny's actually missing the net by 3 feet on the far post.
Okay, sorry.
He
it's on the wrong side for me.
But Ken, there is something that you're talking. Okay, It's one of these ones where I've called it an incidental save. He's almost shooting it to where the goalie is rather than where he's not. And I explained that before. But I want to say something here. If you do go back and take a look at it, the fact that if Connor Hellebuyck doesn't touch this, it sails by the net wide by a healthy margin and rolls around the boards, a lot of people will say, well, there's no value to that. I would say this. The fact that Connor Hellebuyck, if you take a look at the replay, gets his left pad on that shot that is missing the net by 3 feet, but how much of the net he still has covered in that situation is crazy. Like, it is crazy how big he is. There's basically only one spot that Konechny can score there, and it's on the inside of the post or up in the top corner. Like, it's not one of these ones where you've got a yawning cage and you just put it in the yawning cage. Connor Hellebuyck is stopping a shot that is missing the net by 3 feet on the far side, and he still has the vast majority of the net covered. What that does psychologically, if you're Konechny, even if you're thinking, yeah, I whiffed and I didn't put that where I wanted, is that in the back of his mind, he knows if I did put it where I wanted, he still would have had a good chance at stopping that shot. That gets into people's heads. The harder a goaltender is to beat, the more precise players try to become, and the more precise you become, that's what we call squeezing the stick, folks. He's got the ability in plays like that, even if it turns out that puck was going to miss the net, to still get in the heads of the opponents. This was a frustrated Philadelphia Flyers team here tonight. Kevin Sawyer talked about it, talked about them getting to the bench. It's not just the Jets system that they're frustrated playing against. It's when they do finally get an opportunity on the other side of that they're facing a goaltender who's so hard to beat, that leads to that frustration. So I will go with Ken. I will hand him that one and say that is the hashtag Keg Save of the Game. Doesn't matter what we think, though. Matters what you think. Share with us your hashtag the Keg Save of the Game. You're automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine Keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg. Each location finer than the last. And our winner from our last show, I don't know, is this a new one? Kevin Berg. I don't believe you've won this award before. So what you need to do, if you want to claim it, you need to direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me an email. I will have the fine folks at Keg send you a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine Keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg. Each location finer than the last. And that brings us to our Johnston Group Got You Covered play of the game. What do you got, Ken?
Yeah, Sean, I just think it's just, again, a broader thing. For me, I like Parker Ford's game. Understated in some ways, but I know some folks were up in arms. Chibrikov, why isn't the leash longer? It's only 3 games. At a time when the Jets are struggling defensively, I think it's a smart coaching decision to bring in a player who is a defense-first player, who is active as a skater, plays a straight line game, gets to the net, and can kill penalties. So for me, I think that was a smart coaching move. And again, it's got nothing to do with Chibrikov. I thought his second game was tremendous. His first and third games were, mostly meh in a lot of ways. I'm not down on the player. I think he's a very smart player. But I think a game like today, Parker Ford coming in with first game of the season energy, I think was an important part of the win for the Jets today. Again, doesn't get a point on the Barron goal, but the goal doesn't happen without him going to the net. Doing a good job in the faceoff circle. I liked his physical play. Like, you notice him when he's out there. And for me, Chibrikov is a guy, again, he's on the team full-time by next year, but there are still parts of his game he needs to round out, and the defensive part is one of those areas. So I think this was smart coaching, and, we'll see where things go. And Chibrikov's going to play some more before he goes back to the Manitoba Moose. But I think it's important to keep guys on their toes. And I get it. Some people will argue to say, no, play them 20 games no matter what. The Jets are not in they want to develop these players, but you can't just wrap a job in the top 6 for anyone right now. So, I think it was a smart coaching decision So long-winded way of saying that Parker Ford and or the coaching staff's decision to play Parker Ford in this game over Nikita Chibrikov was a we've got you covered play that I liked.
I'm going to hand it over to the system again. I know that this is a little bit of a cop-out, but on this night, I actually think, like, as good as the Jets were, I thought, the fact that they, really didn't throw out a lot of shots. I didn't think the Jets threw anywhere near the kitchen sink at this game. I think this is one that they went out and they said, we're going to walk in, we're going to grind this game down, we're just going to play the system, and we're going to walk out with a win. These kind of wins are important when you're able to go out and you're able to walk away with 2 points without having to take your pound of flesh in that game or have that pound of flesh taken off you. This is the Jets walking away from this game unscathed with 2 points and really not having to throw a lot at this game because of the system. So for me, the we've got you covered moment for me is the entirety of the game, which is obviously not a moment. But the Jets coaching staff has this team. I said it in the explanation of this video. The Jets are back to their blueprint. And it's kind of like you said, this is an important game. This is just a continuation of what we've seen has made this Jets team great for the last 3 years now, and it's just bleeding in. This team understands its identity. It knows how to get to it, and that identity just makes them such a hard team to beat. That's the Johnson Group. The Kenny and Renny OGs got you covered plays of the game. And hey, do you run a small business in Canada? Look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. Ken, you'll be making your way back to Winnipeg post haste for the Saturday game.
Hockey night. There you go. First of the year, buddy.
Hockey night, first of the year. Let's go. There. Sammy the Scarf is going to be in town. Says he wants to come on Kenny and Renny afterwards. So get your scarves ready, folks, because Sammy wants to join in on the action. Anything to say before we get going, Ken?
Yeah, such an impressive feat. 812 points. We've talked glowingly about Mark Scheifele and his career and everything that he's put together, but just the ability for him to hit 812, the way that he had and the way that he did it today. Incredible pass by Kyle Connor, burying that shot. We always knew that he had that sort of Sakic-like wrister release, but he's really worked on his one-timer the last few years, Sean, and that was a great example. And again, Marcus said this last year when he started, moving up the ladder, that he's chasing Dale Hawerchuk's numbers in terms of franchise records. But this was an important moment for the first ever draft pick from the organization. He said it was very humbling for him. And, the other part about it is, there are more records to come for Mark Scheifele. But this was one that definitely we shouldn't just gloss over.
Well, I was thinking about this. When you're a 1,000-point player in the NHL, that's significant. And Mark Scheifele is well on his way to becoming a 1,000-point player. And it makes me, you brought up Dale Hawerchuk, makes me ask the question, hey, let's get on this early, Ken. Does there end up being a Mark Scheifele statue outside the Jets arena to join his mentor, Dale Hawerchuk?
I think it'll be impossible for it not to be happening, Sean. And I've said this before, and I'm just going to say it again. The way that Mark saw the former teammates of Dale on the statue unveiling that weekend, I think honestly shaped part of the reason why he wanted to be a lifelong Jet. I've said this countless times. The adulation that, obviously he knew Dale well, but to see the way that the other people that were in Dale's life, talk so glowingly about him when they had the unveiling, I think that was part of the reason he wanted to be here for his entire career. And, Dale's a guy who should have been a lifelong Jet. And in a lot of ways, this is kind of righting that wrong, if you will. And I do think there will be a statue, and I do think that Mark is going to break all of Dale's Jet records.
Righting that wrong. That's a great point, Ken, and we're going to end on that. So thank you, folks, for joining us. If you appreciate the conversations happening in this space, I would implore you to appreciate and support our sponsors who fight to keep the conversation going in this space. For us, that's Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent, Vittorio Rossi, Cambrian Credit Union, Pristine Roofing, Sweet Lou Furlan, Flame and Comfort, Myers, Johnson Group, the Kenny and Renny OGs, and of course the Keg. Thank you to them. Thank you to all of you folks. We will see you after a Saturday night tilt with a looking to be improved, at least results wise. They started the season 0-5 last year, did the Nashville Predators. They have points in every game so far but one this season. Should be a good tilt, and we'd love to talk with you afterwards. See you then, folks. Bye-bye.